We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrificed?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are Sex People! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hey, Parth.
Hey, Trent.
You're looking well.
Thank you. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
We've been chatting for a while.
45 minutes of pre-show chat, and now we'll see if we can also be interesting and funny now that we've happened to start recording. We have a film podcast. Hi, what have you been eating?
Thank you. Yeah, so I had last night, Sophia came home from work, and I had cooked dinner the last few nights, and then I didn't have any idea what I wanted to cook for dinner that night. And Sophia came home and was like, I have an idea. How about Chipotle? Because we were going to go see 28 years later, The Bone Temple. So there wasn't really time to cook a whole meal. So I had a burrito, and it was pretty freaking delish. But the interesting thing is that I normally, when I have a burrito from Chipotle, I have the whole burrito. This time, however, I, for some reason, was only hungry enough to have half of it. So for lunch today, I had the second half of my burrito and some chips and guac.
So white or brown rice?
White rice.
Black or pinto?
No beans.
No beans. Ugh, the beans are some of my favorite. Okay, choice of protein?
I had chicken.
Okay, and then what are sort of salsas? Any queso or guac?
All right, Trent, I'll just give you the whole lay of the land.
I was doing my half of the deal.
Sure.
Okay.
I had white rice, no beans. Sophia got me on the no beans kick. I like beans when they're in the bowl. I don't really like them in the burrito because I think I like less stuff in the burrito because otherwise it just becomes truly
a monstrosity.
Unmanageable. I got lettuce, corn, and cheese. And I've now been getting the salsa on the side. I get the hot salsa.
No queso or guac, Parth?
Well, we usually get chips and guac. So then we'll add the guac on the side. But I've realized I don't like when I prefer when I can add like my salsa or my guac on the side, because otherwise it all gets mixed in weirdly, or it doesn't get mixed in and it's all in one clump of the burrito. But if you get your salsa on the side, you can sort of add it to your liking.
Cool. I'm sure that was really interesting for the audience, but
none of that'll get cut out in the edit.
I was sort of interested. I mean, now I'm interested to see what gets cut out. You wondering anything about me, or am I just sitting here?
I'm pretty good to go.
All right. Well, let's get.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Trent. I'm just kidding. What have you been eating?
I'm just noshing on some grapes. That's all I've had yet today, even though it's 2 p.m.
Well, I texted you last night, want to record in the morning, and you responded at 12 p.m. I mean, I just woke up, but yeah.
I drank some wine last night, so
fair enough.
I slept and had a weird dream, and the weird dream was that I had a new roommate, and the roommate's mom came to help them move them in, and the mom was Amy Poehler.
Wow.
And she was, wine, weird dreams, I guess. And Amy Poehler was like, don't make a big fuss about it. Like, I've heard it all. And I was like, that's cool. It's nice to meet you. And then I was like, this is going to do huge things for my career.
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
well, you're friends with Amy Poehler's kid now.
Yeah.
And likely Will Arnett's kid, too.
So I woke up sort of thinking that might be a reality, but it wasn't. It's like when I take melatonin, maybe I've told you this, I have the same dream whenever I take a like high power melatonin where I wake up repeatedly in the night convinced that I've killed someone. And then
you have never told me this.
Oh, it's like
convinced that you've killed someone?
I'll be convinced that I've like hit someone with my car or something. I've never done that, by the way. And I'll be like, the cops are going to break down the door any second. This is my final moments of freedom. I just need to enjoy this moment in my bed. And I have like this anxiety that they're going to come. And then I fall back asleep. And then the cycle continues like 2 or 3 times.
Wow. That sounds horrifying.
But I'm just eating grapes because, as Parth knows better than anyone, I'm in an interesting financial situation right now where like I have so little money to my name that I like can't even take the subway.
Well, Trent, you should check your phone right now to see what I sent you.
And so for the second time in my whole life, I've borrowed a small amount of money from Parth just to be able to.
But Trent, genuinely
move around.
check your thing. It'd be funny to get this on mic.
Oh, thanks, Parth.
Yeah.
We're live on air, and Parth just sent me money, guys. What a time to be alive. No, but it is an interesting challenge to be this broke. And I'm not like broke. It's an interesting situation. But I just can't spend any money right now. And so the other day I was
Trent,
like, I need to take
this is so cagey for the listener.
I was like, I need to take the subway. And I was like, I actually don't have enough money to. And so I needed to like wait for a homeless person to like open the emergency door. And then I tipped them $1. And I was like, now I can get home. And so I texted my parents. I wasn't like fishing for money, but like if they sent me money, like that would have been cool.
That's like a very girls experience you just had.
I know. I tried to not ask my parents for money. There's like great shame associated with that. So I wasn't asking. I was just sort of like, yeah, I'm might have to buy some
light these days.
Might have to buy some groceries on your card. And I was anticipating maybe, my mom might drop me, a Venmo. And she just goes, get ready to eat a lot of ramen and pasta, I guess.
Oh, no.
So the real world has come for me. And so I needed to go to my real loan shark Parth.
Well, well, you had asked me for some money, which you'd only ever done once before, and I know you're going to pay me back.
3 years ago.
3 years ago, and also like
a small
for
amount
a film
of money.
shoot. Like it was fine. But you texted me again, and you were like, "Oh, can I have some money?" And then you were like, "I'll pay you back on Friday." And I was like, "Sure, whatever."
Today's no Friday for the
Well,
record.
I wasn't even gonna hold you to it. Like I was like, "You'll pay me back when you can pay me back." But you sent me half of what I had sent you. You were like, "Oh, I promise I'll get you the other half." We got on call, and I was like, "Well, Trent, I mean, I would really rather, if you actually need the money, I would rather you just pay me back later when you have it than..."
And then
like,
I was like, it's funny you mentioned that because, yeah, I'll take the money back.
so I sent it back to him on Venmo with the inscription, "Buy yourself a taco." Which it's certainly more than enough to buy yourself a taco.
Yeah, the tacos, a few burritos, I'm good. No, I'm
You
cool.
can get yourself a few Chipotles, you know?
It's an interesting challenge, eating a lot of soup and ramen and pasta and figuring it out.
You know what else is an interesting challenge for us, apparently?
This could be one of our longest intros ever.
Getting to the intro. So why don't we go ahead and cue that? Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film, and hopefully you have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week we've got returning guest, and not just because it's a part 2. We had him on earlier in the lost days of the podcast.
It's not lost. They're still...
Not lost, just don't really want them to be found. Evan Schiff, he's here to talk with us about working on Frankenstein.
Yeah, he's edited other cool films like John Wick, Chapters 2 and 3, Nobody, The Marvels. We talked to him during the lost days of the podcast for Birds of Prey. And now we talked to him about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which was pretty cool. Pretty cool conversation. Pretty cool guy. Thanks for coming back. If he comes back a third time, that's when you get the bathrobe in the mail.
Exactly.
So,
we'll try
Evan and your team, please contact us, and we'll start stitching the craft services emblem onto the bathrobe.
Trent and I were talking about a potential guest that might have come on for a third time, and we were like, should we for real ask for a bathrobe, or like ask for an address so that we can send a bathrobe to them, because we've been making a bit that third time guests get a free bathrobe. And I think we're still on the fence about whether that's an appropriate thing to do or not. But nevertheless, I think it was more than appropriate to bring Evan Schiff on for a second time, because he's super cool. Yeah, he was really, really cool. Guillermo del Toro, Frankenstein, one of the bigger movies of last year, nominated for a few things. It's probably going to be nominated for some Oscars.
Oscar buzz. Buzz.
Yeah. I wish my boy Schiff would get a Oscar nom.
Maybe. Who knows?
Who knows where anything goes, you know? But regardless of what happens, he came on Craft Services. You probably listened to part 1 if you're listening to this right now.
Yeah.
And without further ado, here's part 2.
Can you talk about if it's different in any meaningful way, editing a movie that's 2 hours and 20 minutes versus a movie that's, say, an hour and 40 minutes long?
I wouldn't say that there's like a huge difference to it. You know, you're always watching the whole film from beginning to end in regular intervals and gauging how you feel about it. And the same when you show it to other people and you get their notes and you get how they feel about it. You know, there's always that like feeling, for me at least, of I want to feel like I'm being led by a competent hand through this film. And so, you know, as you're making it, as you're watching it, you know, at 2 hours and 20 minutes, you just want to feel like there's no lag. And so we spent a lot of time actually I'd say like by the time that we wrapped, the film was probably 2 hours and 35 minutes because we spent all this time as we were shooting actually cutting it down. If we had done none of that, if we'd done a typical workflow, the movie probably would have ended with an assembly of like 3 hours and 40 minutes. And then we would have had to spend a director's cut, you know, trimming that down. But because Guillermo's just so on top of things, we were at, I think, 235 by the time that we wrapped. And then that was like October of 2024. And then we locked and started, you know, mixing in like May, I think, of 2025. So all that time was just to get, you know, an extra 15 minutes out. And again, it's really just like, it's watching it. It's feeling, you know, is there something that feels like it could be done faster or more concisely or has extra information that we don't need? And just really being very merciless about how you, about what stays in the movie and what goes out.
I mean, you had, like we said, previously worked with or on Del Toro's other films, but was there now as like the primary editor, something in working with him that sort of surprised you about him as a director or about his process or anything you could speak to on that?
I mean, I would not be the first person to say that Guillermo knows every department head's job as well as they do. And so, you know, you're always on your toes. And so, you know, as we're like going through the film, trying to take all this time out and get it to 20, we're using every trick that he knows and every trick that I know, you know, in order to like condense things. Because in the end, there's not a ton. Obviously, if the assembly was going to be 340 and the final movie is 220, there is a bunch of footage that is on the cutting room floor. But you'd be surprised at how little it actually would mean if you were to watch it, you would be like, oh, there's nothing here. You know, we didn't lift out, with the exception of, you know, the one thing in the childhood, which was a structural change for story reasons. We didn't lift out, you know, big scenes that, you know, there's not a ton of things to put on a DVD, for example. So it's really just being like very, very surgical, you know, many, many times over. And when you are doing an approach like that, like you really need, you know, all hands on deck in terms of like, okay, how do we like get from point A to point F without all the stops in between? You know, I definitely like learned some tricks from him. I'll take on my next film. Hopefully he learned some tricks from me. You know, it's definitely it's very refreshing to like work with a director who understands editorial as well as he does.
Were there conversations about what this film's relationship with the cultural understanding of Frankenstein writ large and other obviously iconic Frankenstein movies was gonna be?
Yeah, not really. I mean, Guillermo is very much making this for himself the whole time. I mean, he has obviously said in many other places that he read, you know, the novel when he was a child and has wanted to make this movie for literally decades. You know, the interesting thing that I find is that is to hear him talk about how the version of Frankenstein that he made now is different than the one he would have made 10 years ago or 10 years before that, because he's in a different place in his life. I mean, this is a very personal story for him, and he has taken Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and adapted it in a way that makes it obviously still a Frankenstein story and still very close to the tone and the feeling of the book, but there's also so much of him in here that he's not really ever thinking about like, where is this going to fit in the overall like canon of Frankenstein movies, or how is it going to relate to what other people have done? This is first and foremost a movie for him that he's making for himself.
Did you read the book in preparation, or did you try to sort of isolate the script as like, this is what we're making, so I'm only going to focus on this?
Yeah, I mean, I did as much prep as I could do because I didn't know what he would want to talk about. I read the book. I listened to the audiobook. I got a copy of the novel that has the Bernie Wrightson imagery in it, because a friend of mine, you know, that had been working with Guillermo for many years now told me that like that imagery was very influential, at least on how Guillermo was thinking about it. And then, when Mike Hill came around, Mike Hill, did his own thing. Obviously, like the Bernie Wrightson imagery is so iconic. So I looked at that. I watched a bunch of Frankenstein movies over the years. I did as much prep as I could do. And then, of course, I get into the actual interview and there was no interview. That was just like, hey, you're hired. So I was prepared to have whatever version of that discussion that he wanted to have. In the end, we didn't have that discussion. You can see as you watch the film, there are references and homages in very subtle ways to other Frankensteins that he liked that came before ours. And there's certainly no escaping, particularly the universal, like Boris Karloff Frankensteins. Like that's there's not, I don't think that there is an overt reference, but it's like I feel like every Frankenstein sort of descends from that one.
You mentioned the biggest change in the movie, obviously the childhood scene, and then you said other than that, all the changes were very surgical. Is there a scene other than the childhood scene that you could say changed the most over the course of the edit?
Not really. I mean, Guillermo's so specific about what he wants, and he's so clear on what the movie is going to be that you don't get into post-production and go into triage mode. There are scenes that we shot. For example, when we were in Scotland, we shot what was originally supposed to be 2 montages and some dialogue scenes in the middle, when in the part of the film where William is sent off to go prepare the tower and Victor's trying to get this body to come alive. But at the same time, he also wants to spend time with Elizabeth. And that whole section of the film was much longer. And if you see at the end of the montage that we have now, there, it ends with Elizabeth playing piano in this concert. And originally that was for the second montage, and the soundtrack for the second montage was going to be what she's actually playing on the piano, which was a hymn that she had, spent a lot of time learning, because I don't think Mia plays piano. So she had gotten a keyboard and she was practicing, and they had a tutor and all this kind of thing. And then, we basically finished shooting all of the footage for that section. And then Guillermo came in the next day and he was like, yeah, this needs to be much shorter, and we just need to condense all of this. And we created this montage where we basically, we lost most of the minutes of footage that we had shot in the previous, 3 or 4 days by condensing it like that into one single montage. But it was obviously much better for the film to just kind of keep moving. You want to get to the point where the creature's coming alive, and everything that stands in the way of that needs to justify its own existence. And so there was a bunch of stuff in there that didn't necessarily do that. So we took the little bits that we needed, the Oscar going to like the silversmith and seeing the rod and demanding that he redo it, entirely in silver, and, various bits of him putting, the needles into the body and like going and capturing butterflies with Elizabeth while William's eating a sandwich on top of the tower. Like, we took the bits that we absolutely needed to have, and then we left everything else on the cutting room floor.
Can you talk about building the opening, like prelude section of the movie?
I mean, that, like the opening sequence of the creature attacking the ship, that was actually really fun. And I wouldn't say it was like particularly difficult to put together. It was an action scene, and I come, from a long, history at this point of action. So that was really great to like get into like, walk into my office in the morning and start looking at footage and be like, oh, there's a ratchet and a guy lights on fire, and then there's a giant gun that, blasts the creature off the side of the ship and he falls down in the ice. I mean, getting that kind of footage is really, it's really fun. And again, the way that they, that you have to shoot that kind of action is very intentional. And so you're finding the best takes and, and trying to assemble them in a way that keeps everything dynamic, but in terms of like the goals of that scene, we just need to make sure that, you hear the creature speaking. That's also very important. You understand, like, the creature is intelligent to a degree that you will find out later, but like, he can say, Victor, he can say, bring him to me. He can, he's angry about something that you're going to find out. And he's going to be a threat, to the ship and to Victor over the course of the film. So those are sort of, the big high level goals, of that sequence, plus the fun of actually having the action sequence.
And was there any massaging with the very end of the movie with either like the last shot or the end or the final quote?
Final quote was always in there. The last shot, we kept going back and forth between the last shot that's currently in there where you see the creature front on and he's looking at the sunset and he sort of looks down and closes his eyes, versus actually the reverse, which is the shot right before that over his shoulder. That's actually not Jacob in that shot, but it is shot out on like this like tundra, in northern Ontario. And, in early February where it was just like cold and there's just endless snow. And so before the shot in northern Ontario was like a pre-shoot that they did before the main shoot began. And so for the longest time, like that shot, that over the shoulder shot of the sunrise in the background and the hair flowing in the foreground or whatever, that was our last shot because we didn't have the front shot of Jacob, but we always kind of liked that shot and we kept discussing, like, is this our last shot? Do we want to go, do we want to end the movie, on the creature's back looking out into the horizon, or do we want to see, the sun hitting the creature's face, in that kind of like callback to that first morning after he's created, where Victor opens the windows and you see the sun. And so we went back and forth a bunch on that and ended up, keeping that last shot, of him looking at the sun and then looking down and closing his eyes.
Yeah, we asked because that shot from behind is so stunning, but either way is kind of heartbreaking in its own way, I suppose.
Yeah, they're both great. I think in the end, Guillermo really just wanted to end the film like on the creature. But yes, both work.
As we start to wrap up, is there a major takeaway from this film that you'll bring onto other projects? And that could be a technical thing, that could be something emotionally or something that working on this project you'll bring into the next thing you work on.
I mean, I think that like, particularly if I'm lucky to work with a director that values editorial and that is thinking about editing in the future as much as Guillermo, just being on on another film as I was on this one in terms of just like getting a cut as early as possible. If the director's not going to come in and watch it, then I'll take I'll certainly take my sleep. But it was that routine that we got into was so rewarding to see like how much it was helpful, and so immediately helpful that like, yeah, again, if the stars align on another film with a director that for which that workflow works, like, I would totally do that again, because it's so nice to like be on set and to be talking with everybody and to be having that immediate of an impact, as opposed to just sort of like cutting everything and getting into post-production and then realizing, oh, we missed this shot. Now we have to do a reshoot. And, and now the cut has to live for, 4 months or something like that before we can even get to a reshoot to get this thing that we need. Just having that immediacy of being able to like respond so quickly and be so agile on your feet, is something that I would love to do on another movie.
So how long were you on the project all in all?
I started basically the first week of March 2024, and then we wrapped August 1st, 2025. I was in Toronto for 4 months, so from March through the beginning of July. And then I think it was July 1st, we went to the UK. We had a month-long miniature shoot in the UK, and then, or outside of London, I should say. And then we went up to Scotland, and we had like 3 weeks of prep in Scotland, followed by 6 weeks of a road trip where I had this little trailer that my assistant editor and I, would live in while we were on set, not sleep, but like work in while we were on set. And then they would just tow it around, to all the different sets. And I had a rental car and I would drive around. And so every week we were in a different city, carrying these little like NAS boxes as our daily server, and then like setting them up in the trailer we had Mac Pros that were like bolted into the, floor of the trailer so that as the trailer was driving around, they wouldn't bump. There was a whole process to like set this trailer up and strike it every day so that it could, be movable. And then, so yeah, that lasted 6 weeks, and then post started October 2024, and then, continued in until I think I went back to Toronto in July of last year of 2025 to do our sound mix. And then we delivered in August.
Long haul.
It was, yeah. I mean, overall, I think it's 18 months from start to finish, and then like this is my first time really going through like an award season, and it's so great to see all the different departments doing their things. Like the Critics' Choice Awards, were last night, and we won 4 categories of that. So that's pretty awesome to see. And so it feels like it's not actually over, even though, we deliver the movie and it's out and people can watch it on Netflix or, and still actually there's still a few theaters you can watch it in too. And so, it's still continuing.
Yeah. Was this the longest, I assume, you've worked on a project, or?
No. The Marvels was 27 start to finish. That was kind of insane. But I had a great time on the Marvels. I would go back to Marvel at some point. Also, it's an entirely different type of filmmaking, but it's on Frankenstein, I had, my assistant editor, and it was just basically me and her, in editorial in Santa Monica, and whereas on Marvel, I think I had like 15 people or something like that in the department. So
That's that Marvel money.
Yeah, the scale is very, very different. And I had a co-editor who was lovely it's always fun editing with another person too. So like, there's just, there's fundamental differences, but yeah, this was a great experience.
Sure.
And
So 18 months was easy. It was chill.
So are you working on anything now, or have any upcoming releases that you are at liberty to speak on?
I'm working on a little something right now, but not something that I am ready to talk about.
Well, that's exciting nonetheless. Trent, is it Big Kahuna time?
Yeah, it's time for the Big Kahuna final question.
And the Big Kahuna final question, I'm not even sure if you faced it yet, because you came on our podcast very early on in our inception. But it is just, what is the last great movie you watched? And it can be a rewatch or a first time watch, but it can't just be good. It has to be great.
I mean, man, I've seen Sinners 3 times, and I think that movie is great. I love that film.
Yes. I saw that movie 3 times in IMAX and once at the Lincoln Square IMAX, and it was sort of a transcendent experience.
Yeah, I saw it once at my local theater that used to be an ArcLight, but is now something else, but still very nice theater. And then I saw it at City Walk in IMAX, in 70 millimeter 15 perf IMAX, which is always, a great experience. And then I live pretty close to IMAX headquarters in Playa Vista, and they were having an FYC screening. And so I took my mom to IMAX headquarters and was like, this is going to be great. You're going to love the movie. You're going to love going to like actual IMAX headquarters and like sitting in their test theater, and watching it there. And so those are the 3 times that I saw it.
Awesome.
Well, cool. Thank you so much to editor of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, Evan Schiff. He's also edited other cool films like John Wick, Chapters 2 and 3, Nobody, and The Marvels. Thanks so much for returning to our show.
Of course.
Part 2, more like part glue, the glue that holds it all together.
It really tied together the conversation, I would say. Because part 1 would have ended abruptly without
incomplete
where we sort of started in part 2.
Exactly. Thank you so much to Evan Schiff for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Trent, did you have a good time?
I had a good time. I enjoyed Frankenstein, parentheses, Hugo, is that his name? Or Victor. Nope. I enjoyed Frankenstein, parentheses, Victor. I enjoyed Frankenstein, parentheses, the creature.
I was going to ask you, Trent, do you identify more with the man or the creature?
I think it's pretty clear here, if we had to pick sides, that I'm the creature and you're the man who created me. And I can't die. And I'm like trying to kill myself or kill you or kill us. And I just can't.
I have to make your companion for you.
Yes. And I would just be happy if you made me a companion because I can't die. It's funny how dying sounds so horrible, but watching Frankenstein, I was like, it's funny because living forever actually seems much worse.
Yes. Especially, like, if you could be Tom Cruise in, like, the 90s forever, like, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just Jerry Maguire walking around. But if you kind of have to be the creature for your whole life and, like, everybody just wants to fucking kill you, no, that sounds pretty terrible. But what wasn't terrible was this interview. It was a good time.
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed Evan Schiff, parentheses, the editor. I enjoyed talking with him for the second time. And,
yeah, well, hopefully we can get him on for a third and send that hypothetical, potentially real bathrobe over to him.
CS, right above, right on the chest.
Exactly.
That's for craft services. How funny would that be?
We should make them for us, at least. nice craft services bathrobes. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, for Victor and the Creature.
Yeah. Well, we should inscribe Victor and Creature so we know which one's whose.
That's our dynamic. We're Batman and the Joker. We're Victor and the Creature.
Yep. But Trent, Frankenstein is sort of over.
What's next?
But the award season is not over. Frankenstein is but one small part of it, and a whole bunch of movies that are getting nominated for stuff. The Golden Globes, they just happened. You know what just won a Golden Globe?
Wait, was it like Hamnet?
Nice. It was Hamnet. Trent, do we have somebody from Hamnet coming on to talk?
Wait, let me think. We have the production designer of Hamnet, Fiona Crombie. She was super cool. She's production designed other cool films like The Favorite, Beau is Afraid, Mickey 17, and Chloe Zhao's new film, Hamnet. After Nomadland and The Eternals, she back with Hamnet.
She is back.
And I really loved it. I cried. I was in a theater of a bunch of people ugly crying. My mom won't stop talking about this movie, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, when I said that we were getting a guest for Hamnet, you replied with relief because we would finally have someone from the movie your mom won't stop talking about. So really, we do it all for Tracy Elgare,
who a friend of the show from the Jaws episode.
It's true. And the Jaws episode, like all of our other episodes, you can probably find them on all your major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, etc. Trent, do we update listeners on when episodes are coming out, or
yeah, on Instagram and Twitter? Those are the two that we use. You can Craft Services Podcast, I think. You want to stay updated or see fun screenshots of like us and the guests like hanging out.
Trent, you and I we recently went out for your birthday. Sure. And separately, Sophia had said that we wanted to go to the club and dance. And you had said that you wanted to go to the club and dance for your birthday. So we were sort of like, this works out perfectly.
Yeah, Sophia's sort of the reason I had a birthday party.
Which is great.
Yeah, that's a good friend right there.
It was a really good time. And while we were at the club, I said, Trent, we're together. We gotta get a picture for the pod.
Oh my God, I'm flashing back to the fact that happened. You gotta send that picture to me. Does it look cool?
I'll send it to you right now. Cool is a word, you know?
There's many words. I want to react live, and then the episode will end.
We took a few photos. I'm sending it to you right now.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm looking. Okay. Wow. These are photos.
Yeah, they're certainly photos that we took. And the only reason that I brought them up is because kind of the only place you'd be able to see if we did post these for the listener would be on our Instagram. But the nature of these photos, which is to say,
is
that
so
they're not
extreme
very good.
And like us in signs of distress. And somehow I'm really impaired and you're not impaired at all, and we both don't look great.
No, I'm completely sober in this image, and I look sort of insane.
Just as, unhinged as I do. This picture of me and friend of the show, Sophia Alexis, isn't bad from the Mission Impossible episodes and from the Gone Girl episode. And some of these pictures of you and I are pretty rough. But
actually,
I like this
all of the photos of you and me are a little rough.
This one could appear on the Instagram or Twitter if listeners of the show were to follow. Okay, that's pretty cool. To tempt people, if you want to see what I look like drunk on my birthday and what Parth looks like sober when he has to DD, check Instagram or Twitter. And we have new episodes Sundays at 5 a.m. Leave a 5-star review or a 4-star review. That's fine. Tell a friend about the show. It really does help. Bring us up at parties or just like a small social function with just like a few close-knit friends. Like that's cool too. That's all.
That's all, folks. But we can't wait to have you guys listen for next week's episode.
Yeah, go check out Hamnet. Still playing in theaters, I think. I don't know. And then be ready for next week. Be there, be square.
And you don't want to be square.
You want to be a rectangle.
Well, yeah.
Oh,
I mean,